Hi, everyone. I'm Kevin Nelson. We're at another Catholic destination. We are in Ireland, in County Donegal, and we're at Lough Derg, also known as Station Island. St. Patrick's Purgatory. It's a great place of pilgrimage. In fact, it's one of the oldest centers of Christian pilgrimage in Western Europe, dating back all the way to the 6th century. People come here from all over the world to go on pilgrimage. It's quite an amazing place to be, and quite a place of reconciliation, of spiritualness as well. We're going to take you around the island here. We're going to visit the Basilica and visit some of the stations that the pilgrims go on. So please join us as we take you through St. Patrick's Purgatory, Lough Derg, here on Catholic Destinations.
The history of Lough Derg is very much going back to the time of St. Patrick, back in the 400s. And legend has it that Patrick came away to a quiet place to contemplate and to come closer to God. And one of those places was in this area, this region of County Donegal, where you have lots of hills and islands and the lakes. And this island, legend also tells us that Patrick came to this island here on Lough Derg called Station Island. And this is where he had the vision in the cave in the night of Purgatory. And it is from that and the spread of that word that went across Europe at the time that many people came on their travels at a time where people didn't travel far, and Ireland was considered at the very end of the earth, and County Donegal even further, because it's the furthest tip of northwest of Ireland. So yes, it's back to, and that's known as the patrician era.
Patrick is said to have left a disciple by the name of de Vogue to take charge of the area. De Vogue is believed to have set up a monastery on the nearby Saints Island, which is about 10 acres in size. In fact, the name of Saints Island was for a time named after de Vogue. The monastery set up by Saint de Vogue lasted until about 836 AD, when the monks were driven from the island by the Danes.
You had the Augustinian monks came after the patrician period, then the Franciscan monks were here, and after that Station Island, Lough Derg here, has come under the ownership of the Clogher of Diocese here in Ireland. So there's a lot of monastic roots here on Lough Derg, and the monks originally came to this particular island here from Saints Island. They come over on their rowing boat to pray here because this is where Patrick prayed, and they built the monastic beehive prayer cells, and they're stone beehive cells where they went in and they prayed, that just circled the original cave where Patrick prayed and where he saw the vision. And that is the remnants of those monastic beehive prayer cells are what people come here and pray on the ruins of those every season ever since that time. And people still come to Lough Derg today.
The penitential beds, or beehive cells, are the oldest remaining structures on the island, possibly dating back to the 9th century. They consist of a low circular wall with a small space where the entrance would have been. Inside, the bed is a floor of uneven rocks. At the center of each bed is an iron cross bearing the figure of Christ and the name of the saint the bed is named after. The 6 beds are named after Saints Bridget, Brendan, Catherine, Columba, Patrick, and Malaise. Lough Derg is Ireland's national pilgrimage site. Records of pilgrimages taking place at the island go all the way back to the 12th century. The pilgrimage has taken on many forms over the hundreds of years of its existence, but many of the practices used in today's pilgrimage were also used hundreds of years ago.
Well, the pilgrimage, originally people would have fasted for a lot longer period and would have come to the island to have prayed for a lot longer period than they would now today. So over the last couple of decades, the pilgrimage is now a 3-day fasting and prayer pilgrimage. And you come on your first day. You're fasting for a period of 72 hours. So you fast from midnight before you arrive on the island. So you arrive on the island, most people tend to arrive around about midday. So they make their travel and then they arrive here and then they come onto the island and they go through their program of prayer. Many, many years ago, people wouldn't have travelled by car. They would have walked. In Ireland, people would have walked barefooted whenever they didn't, have shoes and socks. So that's how far back we were going. They would have walked from Cork or Dublin or Belfast or Derry, and they walked to Lough Derg, and then they came onto Lough Derg here, onto Station Island, and fasted and prayed for a further 3 days, then left and went back on a walk home. So, a lot of things in our culture and modern day living has changed, but certainly the one thing that is really true still today to the 3-day pilgrimage here in Lough Derg is that people remove their shoes and their socks and they come onto sacred holy ground, and it's sacred land that has been made holy over the years through people praying. For generations and generations, Irish mothers and fathers and grandmothers and grandfathers have prayed for their families. And still today, whenever we talk to pilgrims who come here today, they are praying for their families and for the future of their families. So it's a tradition that hasn't ended. It is continued, which is wonderful.
Thousands come every season to participate in the pilgrimage, which runs from the beginning of June until mid-August. The 3-day pilgrimage consists of 3 days of fast, with only one simple meal of dry bread or toast, with black tea or coffee or water allowed once a day. After a short ferry ride over to the island, pilgrims will check in, drop off their personal items at the dormitories, and then make their way over to St. Patrick's Basilica to begin their pilgrimage. On the way there, they will be able to see the beauty of the island that they will be on for the next 3 days.
We make a special point of welcoming the pilgrims on a daily basis, and again, in my own role, that's one of the joys of just welcoming people. And then while they're here, they discover that they're in the company of so many others like themselves, searching, and they have the freedom to be in conversation with others, or if they so wish, just to pull aside and find that space for themselves. And the beauty of the island, and you have captured it on camera today, and you will be able to let your viewers see it. It's very unique, and even the landscape round about us, the mountains and the lake and everything is just so picturesque, and especially on a summer's day and nice weather, it's absolutely beautiful.
After beginning the station with a visit to the Blessed Sacrament in the Basilica, the pilgrim will make their way outside to St. Patrick's Cross, then to St. Bridget's Cross. From there, they will walk around the outside of the Basilica, and then in order around the penitential beds. At each bed, pilgrims pray walking 3 times around the outside, kneeling at the entrance, walking around the inside, and kneeling at the cross in the center. From there, they go to the water's edge to kneel, stand, and pray. The ritual of the water goes back hundreds of years, where in some cases, pilgrims would completely submerge themselves in the water. The pilgrim will then return to St. Patrick's Cross and the Basilica with more prayers and a traditional offering for the intentions of the Pope to complete the station. 9 penitential stations are done over the course of the 3 days, with pilgrims praying repeatedly the Our Father, Hail Mary, and the Apostles' Creed. 3 stations are made on the first day. The prayers and movements of 4 more are done during the night vigil inside the Basilica, and then 1 is made on the outside on the second day and 1 more on the third, for a total of 9. Pilgrims celebrate Eucharist and night prayer together in the Basilica on each of the 2 evenings of the 3-day pilgrimage. A 24-hour vigil from sleep is observed from 10 p.m. on the first evening. The vigil begins with a reflection on the pilgrimage itself and then goes into a time of preparation for the sacrament of penance, which takes place on the second morning of the pilgrimage.
The following morning, at about 8:30, 9 o'clock, we celebrate reconciliation, the sacrament of reconciliation. And for me personally, that's in many ways the highlight of the 3-day pilgrimage. People have been up all night and you'd expect them to be physically exhausted, as indeed they are, but they are emotionally and spiritually very awake and very open. And wonderful things happen there as people find themselves being reconciled with God, reconciled with the community of the church, reconciled with indeed some things within themselves. So it's incredibly rich. If you ask me the highlight of the pilgrimage season for me this year, it has been celebrating with pilgrims the reconciliation in the morning.
After the sacrament of reconciliation in the morning, the pilgrims renew their baptismal vows. In the afternoon, the Way of the Cross is said, and then in the evening, another celebration of the Eucharist is held, and then the pilgrims are able to finally get some sleep on that second night. On the morning of the third day, the pilgrims celebrate Mass, receive a papal blessing, make their final station, and then depart the island. However, the fast continues on until midnight of that third day. We're inside St. Patrick's Basilica here on the island. It's made to give the pilgrim a cave-like atmosphere. It's very simplistic. This is where the pilgrims will come to spend their night of prayer. Inside the Basilica, one of the centerpieces is the large wooden cross, which was made in the design of the penal crosses that Irish Catholics used in the late 18th and early 19th century. The 16-foot-high penal cross was carved by Imogen Stewart, a German-born artist who came to live in Ireland in 1951. Pilgrims would carry a tiny cross in their hands when coming to the island. One such cross was found in the hand of one of the victims of the only serious boating accident recorded in the history of the pilgrimage. It happened in 1795. A boat carrying about 93 people began taking on water. Panic ensued, and the boat capsized, killing all but 3 of those on board. At the base of the cross is a depiction of a rooster or cock over a pot. According to folklore, it represents the resurrection. While guards who were watching the tomb of Jesus discussed the possibility of resurrection, one of the guards said Jesus had no more chance of rising from the dead than the rooster that was in their pot cooking. At that moment, the rooster jumped out of the pot and crowed the words, "The Virgin's Son is safe." At that, Jesus rose from the dead. The first church of the modern era built on the island was St. Mary of the Angels. It was built in 1763 under the direction of Franciscan friar Father Anthony O'Doherty, commemorating the church in St. Francis's hometown of Assisi. The chapel went through a number of renovations over the years. It was rebuilt in 1813 because the original chapel was so badly built it was not inhabitable. Then in 1870, the chapel was demolished and a brand new one built on the same site. This is the one standing now, St. Mary's Chapel. It has gone through some renovations, but is used mostly as a gathering space for prayer. In 1780, the Franciscans left the care of the island to the Diocese of Clogher, and Father Patrick Murphy became the first diocesan prior. At this time, the caves on the island were replaced by a church dedicated to St. Patrick, and at the time known as the Prison Chapel because of its use during the vigil, when pilgrims were actually locked into the chapel for the duration of the night. Because this chapel only held 300 people, a larger church was needed. The new building was designed by William Scott in 1919, but because of delays, construction did not begin until 1925. During that time period, Scott had died, so the supervision of the building was guided by another architect named T.J. Cullen. Because of the lack of space to build on the island, a good portion of the church rests on 123 pillars of reinforced concrete embedded on the lake floor. Work was completed in 1929, and the church was consecrated in 1931, and in the same year was named a basilica by Pope Pius XI. The octagonal design of the basilica maximizes floor space, and with the use of the balconies can accommodate about 1,000 pilgrims comfortably with room for many more. The shape also allows everyone in the church to have a view of the priest during Mass. Although it is a plain and unadorned interior, the basilica holds some significant features and pieces, including the beautiful stained glass windows. The windows are done by Harry Clark, a well-known Irish artist. The images in the window are of the apostles along with St. Paul and Mary. They each hold an oval plaque, which represents a particular station of the cross. The ovals were made with more delicate colors so that they stand out in relief, allowing the viewer to focus more on the stations of the cross rather than the larger figure in the window. The original icon copy of Our Lady of Perpetual Help was blessed by Pope Pius X and displayed in St. Mary's Church in 1912. However, over the years, it became damaged and could not be repaired. The present icon in the Basilica was commissioned in 1991 and done by Sister Aloysius McVeigh. It's based on the 15th century original by Andreas Ritzas. The altar and ambo in the basilica are made from white Carrara marble and were designed by Peter McTighe from Dundalk. The tabernacle, lectern, sanctuary lamp, and candlesticks were all done by Paddy McElroy of Dublin. All these pieces of art have been sculptured in bronze. The tabernacle is sculptured in the shape of an old Irish reliquary and sits on a granite pillar. Two sides of the tabernacle show a number of people doing ordinary things, such as cooking, playing soccer, picking flowers, and praying. The panels on the tabernacle door show Christ meeting the disciples on the way to Emmaus, the Last Supper, and the Sermon on the Mount. The first stop for the pilgrim outside, after his initial visit to the Basilica, is the St. Patrick Cross. Here the pilgrim will kneel and begin his or her prayers. The cross is a simple plain cross on a stone shaft. The shaft dates back to the Middle Ages and is a relic of the monastic settlement on the lake. After praying at the cross, the pilgrim traditionally kisses it and moves on to St. Bridget's Cross. St. Bridget's Cross is a simple carved cross set in a large stone on the side of the basilica. The exact date of the cross's origin is unknown, but it's believed to be from the medieval period. Much like the other old stone memorials inlaid to the wall of the basilica, the cross had previously been set into the wall of the old St. Patrick's Church. The pilgrim kneels before the cross to say the designated prayers and then performs one of the more striking Lough Derg rituals. Standing with their back to the cross, the pilgrim stretches out their arms in the sign of the cross and says 3 times, "I renounce the world, the flesh, and the devil." The ritual reminds the pilgrim of the Christian baptismal promises. It also recalls the ancient ascetic practice of standing facing the east, sometimes for hours, as Christ on the cross. From St. Bridget Cross, the pilgrim will then start his journey around the basilica 4 times, reciting the prescribed prayers. Having finished that, the pilgrim moves on to the penitential beds for the prayers and the movements around the old cells, walking barefoot along a rocky terrain.
I first came here whenever I was 18, and at that time it was just something that people did, it was about 20 years ago, and People came to Lough Derg and prayed for, exam results and, just health and well-being in their family. And I came. I came with some school friends, and it's just something about the place grabbed me. It is my spiritual home, and for many years after that, I would have come to Lough Derg on pilgrimage, and it's just somewhere that I always come back to.
Throughout the pilgrims' time on the island, they will hear the sound of a bell calling them to prayer. This is from the bell tower, which is on the elevated site between the penitential beds and St. Mary's Chapel. It is said to mark the site of the cave where the earliest pilgrims to Lough Derg would have undertaken their vigil.
Well, they come to Lough Derg for a myriad of reasons, and very often for personal reasons. They've come something about themselves or the family, or to pray for somebody or some situation. But when you move beyond that, you discover that people are still following that deep inner quest for God and for connection with the sacred. And you've been here for a short while today, and you can see, while we have sunshine today, it's a very special place, very peaceful. There's a tranquility about it. And this place has been made holy over the centuries by the prayers of the pilgrims. And people who come here, even people who don't profess to share any particular faith or religious belief, sense that there's something very sacred here.
Also on the island, although not part of the formal elements of the Lough Derg pilgrimage, is a labyrinth. The labyrinth is an ancient symbol found in many different religious traditions. It is a metaphor for life's journey, taking us away from our ego and leading us to that which is within. Walking a labyrinth has echoes of the Irish pattern of prayer, much like the station prayers on Lough Derg. The pilgrim walks peacefully around a place of devotion, offering a path to inner peace and a reflection on one's life journey to God. At the conclusion of the pilgrimage, as the boat pulls away from the Lough Derg dock, the pilgrims sing the hymn to St. Patrick, Hail, Glorious St. Patrick. This song replaced the traditional farewell hymn to Lough Derg, which was a 19th century hymn that dropped out of general use in the latter part of the 20th century, being sung at the end of the pilgrimage up until the 1970s.
We have pilgrims who have been coming here for up on 50 years, hardly missing a year. We recently, and I was at his funeral there recently over in County Cavan, an elderly gentleman who made the pilgrimage 3 times this summer and had been doing so for many a year. And he was just a lovely man to meet. And I was at his funeral, as I say, and they talked about him as a living saint.
People will come on pilgrimage here over 40 years, every year for like 40, 50 years. And then we welcome people that have just been here once or never before. And the wonderful thing about it whenever people leave is that they are smitten, is probably to use that word. They really are about the place. That is just somewhere that's very special. And it is very hard to explain that you would go through staying awake, praying all night, walking in your bare feet, that you would actually leave the island with such an uplifting experience. But that's because there's something happens within, something much deeper than any of us can explain. And it's that emptying yourself of the world, really, and coming closer to your God and meeting yourself as well. I think people would say that they come here in pilgrimage, and I myself, it would happen as well. You come here maybe seeking something, maybe wanting some answers, and you can be surprised by what our Lord says to you and what you go away with. And that is one of the mysteries and the real spirit of Lough Derg.
Well, we hope you enjoyed our visit here to Lough Derg, and we hope you felt the spiritualness of this place through the pictures that we presented to you. We want to thank everybody here for helping us put this together. Father Owen, Sharon, and the entire staff were wonderful. Thank you as well for joining us. Well, that's going to do it for us here in Donegal, Ireland. My name's Kevin Nelson. I invite you to join us again next time for another Catholic Destination.